Tarry here, where the stories never grow old, and you hear something new every time they are told, and it comes clear. So tarry here, where it doesn't matter your age, and when we gather round the table, we all take the stage year after year. So tarry here.
Welcome to the Enlighten Radio Storytelling Hour at enlightenradio.org. I am Fanny Crawford.
And I'm Stash Ziolkowski.
And today is September 9th, 2024. And our theme today is natural phenomena. And I think we're going to have some varied and eclectic stories for you, our audience, today. How was your week, Stash?
Interesting, busy. Of course, daily visits to Brother Tony and listening to his complaints about various things. I think he's getting bored with television. Now he just likes to find fault. You know, things like my brother, he's forgetting a lot of things. He couldn't. He told me yesterday he didn't have any breakfast, and I don't know why they miss our breakfast. Here it is, it's 11 o'clock in the morning. I still haven't eaten. It actually was. Then he stopped, and I said, "Oh, you can see the clock, right?" Yeah. I said, "Well, it's actually noon. It's not 11 o'clock, and your breakfast tray is sitting over there on the counter, and I'll take that away and bring your lunch soon, I guess." And he said, "Wait a minute. Oh yeah, I did have breakfast, and it was good today." And then he told me all the best parts about breakfast, and then except for the scrambled eggs. Scrambled eggs were so hard that he was looking for a slingshot, and he was going to open his window, which he can't, and put the scrambled eggs stuff in it and shoot and kill some birds.
Wait a minute. I want to back up a minute. So when you say, you said to start that he's getting bored with TV. So is this, so after 86 years?
Yeah.
He is finally ready to give up on TV? Or
no, he leaves it on all the time. But when I went there yesterday, the Weather Channel was on. And I said, "What's up with this?" Because usually he has crime shows or something, or sometimes it's old westerns. It just depends on what he does with his fingers and touches the thing. And then, but he said, "Oh, well, I watch the weather every day," which is not true. It's just, he's very forgetful about things, names and stuff, So, but
okay.
We still have good conversations and have some laughs. So
that's good. And he's still thrilled to see you every day.
Oh my goodness, yes.
I'm expecting.
His eyes light up. No, he did tell Terry on Saturday that I was a bully.
Because
I've been telling him to behave himself. He likes to joke around with the girls and everything. And I told him, I said, "You got to be careful of what you say and what you do, because I don't want to get a phone call that says, 'Come get your brother and take him to jail,' or some,
What does he do?
Oh, he flirts all the time, So I was in there a couple days ago when they were cleaning him up. He gets a bath in bed because he can't take a shower anymore. He can't stand up. He never leaves bed unless they have to bring a device in with chains and everything and lift him up from the ceiling, and put him into he has a special chair now, jury chair. And a couple of times Terry has gone outside with him. She has called and said, I'm going to come in about half an hour. You think you can get Tony in this chair and bring him outside? And they've done that, you know. But he has to have a CNA, you know. He has to have a certified nursing assistant push that chair because it's bulky and it's big, you know, and has to stay outside with him, you know, or at least somebody has to be outside with him, and she has to come and check on him every couple minutes. So, but you know, he just forgets things that have happened just recently over that. Anyway, when I was in there and they had just finished bathing them, the ladies are so nice. I mean, they take care of them just like a little baby. I mean, everything, you know, they wash them completely, you know, put on a new diaper and all this stuff. And just one lady who's very nice, and I've seen her a number of times, been here. I've probably seen him have it or been there when he's having his bath a number of times. And she said, okay, Tony, anything else we can do for you? And he said, yeah, well, you come over and sit on the bed and kind of snuggle up with me. And, you know, and I've warned him about that before, because that's not everybody can, not all those ladies can, no one's, I don't think anyone's complained yet, but not every person can take that kind of joking. You know, some of them have some families and stuff like that who I'm sure that they deal with stuff, and then they come in here. They don't need some crazy guy trying to get them into bed. And he's very jovial and friendly and everything, but still, that could be misinterpreted. You know. So.
Mm. Okay. Is that the worst thing he says? Snuggle up?
Oh yeah, he doesn't use any bad language or anything. No, and he doesn't say anything. He doesn't use any, you know, descriptive language or anything like that. It's just he's just very flirty, and he always has been, you know. And then, you know, so, and he's always saying to them when I walk in, and if somebody's there, he says, "Oh, here comes the good one," and they'll look at him, you know, if they haven't heard it before, and he'll say, "Well, I'm the bad brother. He's a good brother."
Okay.
Yeah. So
yeah. We're 7.5 minutes into
exactly.
So
right
how about so I'll thank Andy Alfred Irwin for opening our show with Tarry Beer. Always delightful to hear his music, and we appreciate that we're allowed to use that every single Monday.
And I would like to introduce some things about Speak.
Good.
Speak Story Series tomorrow, Tuesday, September 10th at 7 p.m. in Shepherdstown. And that's because I thought it was going to be because it was going to be a long performance, but it is going to be a longer performance than normal, possibly. But also tomorrow night is the debate, and Adam, in his wisdom, would never want to keep all the wonderful voters in our area and throughout the country from watching the presidential debate, since it'll probably be historical and maybe even hysterical. So, and that's tomorrow night, Tuesday, September 10th, in Shepherdstown at the Community Center at 7 o'clock. Debs Newbold is going to be presenting as Dauntless Grace O'Malley, and it looks like it's going to be a great show. And then October 8th at 7:30, Adam Booth doing Scary Stories, and I'm hoping to be there in person for that, because I like to see Adam in person. In fact, the last speak I was at was seeing Adam in person. I'm not sure. Anyway, and then in November, Rachel Dart, the 2024 commission recipient, and she will be premiering a brand new story, and that'll be at October 8th at 7:30. And unfortunately for tomorrow, Terry and I are going away right after the show. We're going away today. We're going to Deep Creek Lake for a couple of days. And I know that they'll have Wi-Fi someplace at Deep Creek Lake, and I'm hoping that we'll have Wi-Fi in our room so I can watch Speak tomorrow night. But who knows? That's always a crapshoot sometimes when you're going away, whether you get strong enough Wi-Fi to do something like that. But yeah, that's all the news.
Okay. Well, would you like to start us out?
Well,
with a story?
yes, and I think this interesting. This thing about what you say phenomena. The reason and I was thinking about disasters and stuff because we mentioned that the other day, but phenomenon, and I want to talk about. I did some research on things that because when we talked about this, what happens to people when there's a thing, I remember when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, there was a hurricane in the Baltimore area, and it was really fun to go out, and there was a lot of wind and things were blowing around, and I saw some exciting things. A metal sign that was on the side of a building that was an ice house, a block and a half away from my house. There was a metal sign on that building, and the wind from the hurricane was so strong it ripped that sign off the wall. It went across the street, and just like a knife, it went into a building. And luckily, it went into a building between the bottom floor, where there was a storefront, and the second floor of the building was a 4-story building. There were apartments on the 3rd and 4th story, but on the second floor of that building, there was a storeroom. And that metal sign, which turned out, I think in the paper it said it was like 12 by 20 feet. Didn't look that big when I saw it in real life. I saw it the day after the storm had passed by, but it actually went in like a knife. It was ripped off the wall, flew across the street, and I guess spinning sideways, and just like a knife, it went right into this brick building, sliced into it, and it was about 4 feet into the building, and the rest of it was hanging out. And that was scary. Thank goodness that nobody lived in that second story, and that nobody was working in that storeroom at the time. Of course, with the hurricane going on, I guess they would have been downstairs or something. Anyway, it was a lot of excitement. Though I lived on Bank Street, which was 4 blocks above the water, at the harbor that runs along a long edge from the Baltimore harbor, along the city of Baltimore. And but I walked down to Fleet Street, which was 2 blocks below my house, and there was the water. It was 2 blocks. The water had come up from the harbor 2 blocks. It wasn't very steep, so I guess it didn't have to raise very much, but it must have been raised about 15 feet or so. And that was kind of weird because there were people in the houses there. And when I went down looking around, there were people on their front porch, on their front steps and stuff, talking to each other and saying things about the water. And there was, they were saying their basements were flooded and all that stuff. That was kind of interesting. So
yeah,
and I've been in a couple of things. When I was in the Army, 1959, on a bivouac. We were out in tents and everything, and there was a hurricane came up, Fort Jackson, South Carolina, and we were evacuated. Kind of, we were going to go back to our barracks, and it was about a 10-mile drive. Unfortunately, our commanding officer was gung ho, and he thought his troops were better than everybody else. He turned the trucks around, and of course, he was in a Jeep, which was easy for him, and he had the rest of us, 221 young soldiers with their sergeants. We marched the 10 miles back to the barracks in the rain, in the wind, in the storm. And he was so proud of us that he gave us, when we got back to the barracks, he gave us the rest of the day off. We didn't have to do anything except clean up all the stuff. It was, so
he was probably not a popular guy.
Oh no, but he talked it up. He said how proud he was of us, that we were the only company on the fort that didn't shy away from the storm and didn't have to be put in trucks like and he even called the rest of them, all these other guys are babies, but not my men. And of course that works on 17, 18, and 19-year-olds really well. It was like the football coach or something. So anyway, but in thinking about that, and in thinking about our discussions, I just decided to look into something that's always bugged me, that when terrible things happen to human beings, they look for explanations. And in our modern times, I think we're better now, although it's not true that it's 100%, because human sacrifice, I'm told, is still going on this planet. Some places on this planet, even nowadays, and especially with some of the indigenous people who are not, educated like the fortunate people like us who live in the United States, where we have nice schools and everything. And so I decided to look into that, because I do remember when something terrible happened, all of a sudden people started praying as if that was going to make it stop. And so I did some research. And in the research, I found some incredible things about human sacrifice, that there is all kind of archaeological evidence of human sacrifices, with the Mayans, the Aztecs, the Incas, a number of other, I guess they would be like Native American or Indian tribes in South America and different parts of the world. And so I found this list, and I was looking for a story, but this list caught my eye, and I decided I would share information from this list. So here we go. And some of these have dates on them, but the dates are less important than the information about what they did. 6th to 4th century BC, archaeological evidence of human sacrifice in southwestern Bulgaria. 5th century BC, Herodotus reports of human sacrifice among the Scythian people. 480 BC, according to Plutarch, the Greek commander Themistocles sacrificed 3 Persian prisoners of war before the Battle of Salamis. I guess he figured killing 3 of the enemy and sacrificing them to his gods would give him a victory or so. 228 BC, first known case of human sacrifice in ancient Rome. 216 BC, second known case of human sacrifice in ancient Rome. A pair of Vestal virgins, Gauls and Greeks, were buried alive at the Forum following a defeat at Cana. And I guess that was to make up for their defeat. 114 BC, the last human sacrifice occurred in Roman Republic. A pair of Gauls and Greeks were buried alive at the Forum. 97 BC, the Roman Senate outlawed human sacrifice. How about that? Getting to modern times. First century BC, archaeological remains of human sacrifice near the Aegean Gold River in Mongolia. It's just incredible. And apparently, this is partly influenced by a book I'm reading right now about a person on death row. But apparently, even though we live in a country that is not based on religion, but we are wrapped up in religion. We have so many religions going on. There are a lot of people who want to say that the United States is a Christian country. The country was not founded as a church-related country. In fact, the Constitution mentions the separation of church and state, though we do have the right in this country to follow whatever faith we believe in. However, we do perform a form of sacrifice here. We kill, in this country, lots of people every year in the name of justice. Even though all of our courts and courtrooms have things like reminders. We have a Bible that people have to swear on when they're in court. And we also have the 10 Commandments. And one of those commandments says, thou shalt not kill. In no place have I ever found an addition to that, or a proviso, or something else that says, except, but we do put people to death in our prison system, especially in the state of Texas. Texas seems to be the state that does it better than anybody else, or worse than anybody else, because they've had a number of disasters. But in our courts of law, a person can be sentenced to any number of years, or to a lifetime imprisonment, or given the sentence of death. And it doesn't make any difference that Bible's sitting up front where they have people swear on it, and those commandments are listed in there, and one of them says, thou shalt not kill. But apparently they don't bother with pointing out that someplace that somebody must have said, unless the judges decide that the person should be killed. And so I think we actually still have a form of human sacrifice in that we put people to death in our prison system. And I had a hard time falling asleep just last night thinking about that we prepare a last meal for prisoners, and then they do all these rigmaroles. They have the last walk. They can't touch anybody. They don't even get to go, like if the prisoner's wife or mother comes to see them, they can see them through a plexiglass wall, barrier between them and that. And no last hugs or kisses or goodbyes like that. And it just seems like we have moved some from the barbaric days of sacrificing babies to the gods of the mountains when the mountain shoots fire out of the volcanoes and stuff. And to appease the gods, some of the ancient tribes would do that. And also, and when there was going to be a war, sacrifice some virgins to the gods so that they would give us great benefit in fighting in the war. So, and it all goes along with Stas's theorem that the human race is very flawed as a system of creatures, and that sooner or later we're going to wipe ourselves out and the planet will go on by itself and to its eventual doom too. So there you go.
Oh.
How's that for a bright Monday morning?
Okay. Well, I don't have a counterpoint to that. I'm not going to try to talk you out of it or give you a different perspective. I'm just going to go into my piece, and it's not well, it's a little more hopeful than that. I hope, but we'll see. So I came to this suggestion for our title. I think the words natural phenomenon were actually yours, but we got to that from a conversation in my telling you about what I wanted to talk about today. So I've recently finished reading a book called What Storm, What Thunder by Miriam Chancey. And this book is the 2024 One Maryland, One Book selection. Many different groups of people, especially book clubs and reading clubs, are engaged with this text right now. One Maryland, One Book is part of the Maryland Humanities group, and libraries all across the state are giving away copies of this book, encouraging people to read it. And I'm part of a club, we call it a walking book club, that meets weekly at the gymnasium of the Hagerstown Community College, which is very close to my home, and I go there most weeks on Wednesdays, which is when the official meeting time is. And on average, there's 25 to 30 women there and a few men. There are always some men, but it's mostly women. And it's a social club. It operates on the research base that active and regular social connections, especially as we age, bestow health benefits that are equal to or surpass the health benefits of a good diet and exercise combined.
Wow.
In other words, we need social connections to sustain and improve our health. So 2024 is the 18th year of the annual One Maryland, One Book event. It's a community reading program sponsored by Maryland Humanities. And it has the specific goal of bringing together people from diverse communities for the shared experience of reading and engaging with the same book. This year, the theme is restorative futures. And throughout the year, partner organizations of all types, of which my walking group is a fine example, bring discussions, programs, and events related to the book to communities all around the state. And I was asked to be one of 5 readers who would each summarize a portion of the book. One summary each week for 5 weeks. There are 11 chapters in the book, but the next to the last one is very short. And this is the current book for what we call our walking book club. And then the intention in asking me to do this is to end my summary with a few questions. This will only be about 7 minutes. I get 7 minutes to talk about my takeaway from the book with a focus on the 7th and 8th chapters. And then end with a few questions to get conversation going. as we walk and talk with each other in the gym. Each of the chapters in the book is based on a specific character. And by the end of the book, the reader comes to understand the connections among the characters. There are 3 different but interconnected families, each of which suffers stupendous losses during the earthquake in Haiti in 2010 and its aftermath. And we as readers experience those trials and vicissitudes with them. So I finished my first reading of this book almost exactly a week ago. And then 4 days later, I listened to a discussion on Zoom with the book's author, Myriam Chancé, and learned a bit of her history. She was born in 1970, so she's now in her early 50s. She was born in Haiti, raised for part of her life in Canada, and is now a writer and professor, chair of humanities at Scripps College, which is, I actually researched this because I had heard of Scripps College, but didn't know anything much about it. It's one of 5 undergraduate and 2 graduate schools comprising Claremont College in California. And it's modeled on the affiliated colleges of Oxford University in the United Kingdom. Now, there's now almost 9,000 students at Claremont and more than 4,500 faculty at the 7 including staff, faculty, everybody that gets paid to be there at 7 contiguous campuses. So it's a centralized campus, but a lot of different specialties. There's a medical center, there's a literary center, various humanities and arts programs. Chancé, the author, has a number of other works of fiction, as well as a plethora of academic books and articles. And she has a new book coming out, also set in Haiti and the Haitian diaspora, called Village Weavers, that I'm eager to get my hands on. But I really enjoyed and got a lot out of the Zoom event on this past Thursday with the author herself and the 3 other book people who spoke and asked questions of the author. And I think it was the kickoff event for One Book Maryland for 2024. So there will be other events scheduled all around the state. And if you go to Maryland Humanities or website or just type in One Book Maryland, you will find a listing of all the different events, some of them in person, some of them virtual. One of the speakers on Thursday was Dr. Hermione Pierre, who's a public health scientist, a registered nurse, and a mental health practitioner of 20 years. And she was directly involved in or experienced the 2010 earthquake in Haiti. And as a result of that life-changing experience, she now focuses on helping people overcome past trauma and emotional and physical pain. The second speaker was Dr. Marie-Josée Nguenzu Tayo, who is senior lecturer in French at the University of the West Indies, former head of the Department of Modern Languages and Literatures there. And she specializes in literature and culture of French-speaking Caribbean, meaning Haiti, Martinique, and Guadeloupe. And she recently received a designation of Chevalier from the French Ministry of Education. There was just a bit of chatter about that award and what that means in a French-speaking country. The moderator was Dr. Mamaira Prospera, professor of global and international studies, but specializing in Caribbean and Latin America, particularly Black and Haitian social movements. Well, Dr. Miayum is the French pronunciation of Dr. Chancet's first name. I would say Miriam, but it's actually pronounced Miayum in French. She began her presentation with the first page of the novel, What Storm, What Thunder, and a quotation from Frederick Douglass in 1852, more than a decade before the Emancipation Proclamation in this country. And I was struck by that quote because I'm familiar with this quotation. I'm familiar with the speech that Frederick Douglass made in July 1852, in which he references the blasphemy of the celebration of American Independence Day as it is celebrated in the United States, but what he sees as a terrible injustice. Quote, "At a time like this, scorching irony, not convincing argument is needed. Oh, had I the ability and could reach the nation's ear, I would today pour out a fiery stream of biting ridicule, blasting reproach, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke. For it is not light that is needed, but fire. It is not the gentle shower, but thunder. We need the storm, the whirlwind, and the earthquake." So that quote from the author Chancet, Madame Chancet, was her explanation for the title. You know, the title of the book is What Storm, What Thunder, and yet it's about an earthquake. So there is no rain involved per se. And in this context, the quote is a reference to the need to bear witness to the lives lost, to devastation, death, and despair. So, but somewhere between 227,000 to 300,000, 300,000 people's lives were lost in the earthquake in Haiti in 2010. And some of that loss, those lives lost were the result of the lack of resources to dig people out, the lack of food, the number of hospitals that were damaged and completely destroyed and could not be used in any way to help with the recovery. The international relief effort did not begin until 3 or 4 days after the earthquake. And of all the promises that were made to Haiti about the resources and the workers that would be on site to help them recover, many of those pledges were reneged on by the international community. And Haiti has still not recovered from that disaster. So the suffering there is at least partly a result of the actions and lack of actions of the rest of us who have resources to live well, who refuse to witness and address the suffering of those who are trying and mostly failing to live with minimal resources, and then are struck with tragedy and lose everything. So this is the third world story, What Storm, What Thunder, but with connections to first world locations and characters and lifestyles. And the story begins with Ma Lu, who is a market woman, meaning one of those older women who sit all day in the community market of Port-au-Prince in Haiti, selling her wares, but also keeping tabs on her community. She sees all, she knows everyone. And her name, Malu, is what she's called by her family and neighbors after her most frequent phrase, the thing she mentions in almost every conversation, speaking of her now deceased husband, which to them sounds like Malu. She's saying, my Lu. And after her introduction to the earthquake, to her experience in the marketplace that day. Every chapter in the book is focused on one particular character. And as we progress through the earthquake with the characters, with the protagonists, we learn the interconnections, tragedies, and some triumphs of these three interconnected families that people the story. I found the book to be a very, very difficult read. It's an excellent book. I highly recommend it, but it's tough. I probably cried 3 or 4 times over the course of the 3 days that it took me to read this book. I started on not this Sunday night, but the Sunday night a week ago, and I finished it on Tuesday night that same week. So I'm going to quote just one piece, I think, from the book itself. This is the last chapter, which returns to Malu. So the book starts with Malu's experience of the earthquake, her memories of the earthquake itself. And then at the very end of the book, she gets a coda to explain a bit more of the meaning of the earthquake to her personally, not just to her community and her family. So this is the very last page. The chapter says, the chapter heading is Port-au-Prince 2012. And then she speaks. After we bury the bones in my birth village, I sit on the ground above them. The men I paid to dig the holes scatter back to their lives, probably wondering what this crazy woman from the city has been doing with a bag of rattling bones, asking for their help. If I were younger, I would have dug those holes myself, dug them with my own hands, cupping the earth to feel the richness of the soil, to be tattooed with red henna of it. I watch the men go, the plaid of their shirts clinging to their backs, mumbling to each other as they depart, their shuffles over their shoulders, balancing. I feel the wind pick up and caress my cheek. Then I realize it is Anne. Feeling the softness of her hand, first I startle, and then I weep. Long and hard, as I've never wept before, not even when my own mother died so long ago now. I take Anne's hand from my cheek and kiss the hollow of her palm. And as I do, I think of all those bones with no one to claim them, all the bodies found that were thrown into a pit somewhere on the outskirts of the capital, beneath the cleaned up city, disintegrating, becoming foundation. I realize then that those who died may have been unclaimed, their remains abandoned of necessity, but never, never were they unloved. For all of them, for us, with Anne's palm against my mouth, I weep. I'm going to stop there.
That's touching, yeah.
It was a moving experience reading this book, and because I have to talk about it in front of 30 to 40 people, I'm going to read it again, at least parts of it, perhaps the whole thing. And I would say it could be a life-changing experience for many people.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I knew a little bit about the earthquake in its immediate aftermath. I read the newspapers, but it's been a long time, 2010 to 2024. And I've forgotten most of what I read. And I put, I compartmentalized. I put as much of it as possible out of my mind because I was not going to go to Haiti to help. We gave money to the effort, but it's not something I think about on a regular basis. And this is such a well-written book that gives 10 different perspectives on the earthquake. It shares the experiences of 10 imagined people. These were not based on interviews. These were not actual people. But the experiences can be assumed to be very much typical of what occurred for people at the various sites, at the worst sites of the earthquake. It was not just one place. It was all over the island, including the Dominican Republic and Haiti. There were significant earthquakes in Puerto Rico and other islands nearby in the Caribbean at the same time. And Haiti was certainly the epicenter, but just the sheer numbers, the sheer statistics, the time statistics, how long it took people to be uncovered, the number of people who talked to the people around them, standing near them, who were not able to reach adults and children buried in the rubble from the earthquake. And the memories of that, how those experiences haunted the survivors, the lack of food, the lack of water. I mean, water was not delivered for days. The quickest delivery of water, I think, was 3 days from the event. And there were places that had no water for more than a week afterwards. So it's almost an unthinkable, unimaginable experience until you hear from people who were actually there.
Well, you've convinced me not to read the book.
Yeah, I know a lot of people who have decided on hearing about the book that they were not going to read it. Just the description on the flap of what this book is about is daunting. You really have to be prepared.
It's interesting. Part of what you said was very interesting, that the people were not real people. That they were.
It's a book of fiction.
A book of
fiction. It is a book of fiction. And it's grounded in reality.
Yeah.
So all of these stories happen to somebody there.
But but nobody is attributed with the story.
No. But the people who were discussing the book on Thursday were all Haitians. And the woman who wrote the book is Haitian. And she spent significant time there in the immediate aftermath. And it's not that it's fiction, but it's true fiction. You know, it's not it's not based. It's not a documentary,
right? Yeah.
But she knows these stories. She heard these stories from hundreds and hundreds of people. But she purposely did not base these stories on interviews. She was honoring the people who died and the people that shared their stories by not quoting them. She created composites of people and whole families. I mean, whole families wiped out. You know, it's really, even talking about it is difficult, because without reading from the book, you're not really getting a sense of what it's like. But I have to figure out how to do that. On September 17th or 18th, when I do my piece.
I was touched by what you were saying very much. You know, you expressed it well, and so, you know, it depends on the person. So you're a sensitive person, so naturally those kind of things bother you. But I think it is a touching story. Even if it was imagined, it would be. I'm sure it would be touching. You know, I'm just amazed that things like that happen, and why is it that it hasn't been fixed? Now, by fixed, I mean, why isn't that Haiti has not been rebuilt? And
Haiti owed foreign aid something like $5 billion before the earthquake. So they were already destitute as a nation. They lived under a dictatorship, a self-serving dictatorship for decades. And resources were pillaged, resources left the country. And sure. Even the wealthy people, I mean, there is still a huge class discrepancy in Haiti, even now.
Of course.
And, there's no immediate solution in the works. I mean, the women who were speaking on the Zoom call that I was on, the kickoff to this book read, had a few things to say about what comes next, but they did not have whole cloth solutions. Their main purpose is working with individuals. One of them was a nurse who's an academic as well as a practicing nurse. And she is working with individuals trying to get them help to heal beyond the tragedy. And some of her talk was about the system, the health systems needed, the medical support systems needed in Haiti and elsewhere. It's not like this is the only place that this is happening. There are other places like this. There is a chapter in the book from the next generation that the woman who opens the book is an elder. But there are other people in the book who represent other generations, including children. And the young woman that's imagined, the young woman who has a full chapter in the book, is in Rwanda when the earthquake happens in Haiti. And she's trying to decide where she needs to be. She's Haitian, so she wants to be home helping Haitians. And yet she's dealing with the trauma in Rwanda, and she's torn between leaving her current community where she is needed and instead going back to Haiti where her family is. She doesn't have much family, but she has some family there. And so some of the book is about recognizing suffering all over the world. It's not just Haiti, and how that came to be, the histories of some of those places. But mostly it's about figuring out what each individual person can do to be helpful. And not all the characters in the book do figure that out. Some of them die. Some of them take their own lives. Some of them are in a different reality. They're not able to exist in this reality. So they're having mental health crises that they don't recover from. And some of them persevere. So Ma Lu, who is kind of the overall guide to the book, she only has 2 chapters, but she's visible throughout. You know, she's a survivor. She's a worker. She's a community savior in some ways, in that she's dedicated to her community. And yet she's suffering almost equally to the people that have lost their minds and have succumbed to madness. And so you don't get any answers. You just become sensitized to communities that you're not a part of, that we experience through the newspapers. So this is a different way of experiencing other people's realities, which is the point of, the One Book project, the One Maryland One Book. It's a way to get people talking about differences and similarities and how to understand your neighbors, kind of thing.
In the One Book project, did they ever have a happy book?
Some of them have been happier than this book. The only other One Book selection that I read that I can remember, there may have been one or two others, but the only one I remember was a biography of Harper Lee, which was one of the early selections. I don't know if it may have been the first one. This is the 18th year of One Book. So it would have been in the early 2000s. And while that book, I don't remember the name of the book, but it was about a recent biography of Harper Lee, who of course wrote To Kill a Mockingbird. So most people who read that book, the biography, also read or reread To Kill a Mockingbird.
Right.
And that book was much more positive. It did critique Harper Lee and provided details of her life that most people, even people like me who loved the movie and the book To Kill a Mockingbird, did not know about her life. Some of the things that are kind of problematic from what we know now, from our point of view now. But it was overall a positive book and left you feeling glad that you had read both To Kill a Mockingbird and the biography. I'm not there yet with this book. I'm only a week into thinking about it, and it's a much more difficult book, both in terms of following the characters, because there are 10 different chapters, each one focusing on a different person and their families. So you not only have to remember who you're reading about and move on to the next chapter, remembering what you read. So I'm constantly going back and forth between chapters to remember whose child is whose, and has that person lived through that trauma. So it's structurally difficult. And it took me through the end of the first chapter and reading all the notes in the front of the book and the description on the back of the book to understand where I was in the book. And I might be slow with that because I'm a fast reader, which means that I probably skip things. I don't mean to skip things, but I probably do. So that's why I need to go back and reread, because to talk about the book, to explain to people what the book is about and why they might want to read it, even though it's tough. It's structurally, it's beautiful. I mean, the way by the end of the book, I was amazed at how these different lives intersected, how they assisted each other without even knowing they did, and what it says for the future of Haiti. But it takes some brain power to get through it.
Is there a future for Haiti? Is it going to be better? It's going to be all fixed someday?
Both the author and the other women who were part of the Zoom call, and a little bit actually in print in the book, is hopeful.
Right.
But you have to be willing to read through the tough parts in order to get to why you should be hopeful.
Yeah. And why do you think
58 minutes? What?
I know. Why do you think after all this time that Haiti is still in so much trouble?
Because Haiti's not going to progress, not going to move forward without international assistance.
Right.
So
and
much
why
has
do you
been taken from Haiti since the 1600s.
Right. And why do you think
there's no way for them to recover on their own?
And so what do you think is needed?
An international, even the UN failed them.
Right.
So the UN gave a significant amount of money. They gave a significant amount of person power. They had boots on the ground. And then they pulled out, and without addressing any of the infrastructure resources and the money they took in, and the money that came from the United States and many other places, was not well organized or recorded. There's no paper trail of a significant amount of the money. I mean, you don't have to call it a paper trail, whatever you call it.
I understand. Yeah. So,
there was no accountability for how the money was spent. And the people who benefited from the money were primarily not the poorest and the neediest people in Haiti. So, as is usual all over the world. But it's pretty shocking. So, so the UN may be a piece of the puzzle, but there needs to be a whole lot more accountability for things to actually improve.
Yeah. I wonder, I just,
I don't have any answers. For me,
oh no,
it's
I was
the
just
experience of reading the book that mattered. And yet we are now over 1 hour.
Yes, I know.
So I should probably say, thank you for listening to the Enlightened Storytelling Hour. I'm Fanny Crawford.
And I'm Stash Ziolkowski.
And we've just finished another weekly segment of the Enlightened Radio Storytelling Hour, inviting you, our listeners, to share, listen to, and pass on stories from our various communities. Stay tuned for John Case and...
I'm afraid we've switched to the blues today. There's been a change.
That's good.
There's been a change in the weather, and so that was bound to happen, and it actually has.